Welcome to the June edition of Absolute Security's Patch Tuesday updates. Our Patch Tuesday expert Rob Brown joins me fresh from his appearance at the InfoSec event in London. We have a fresh set of updates and a new look cheat sheet available on the blog. Exciting stuff. Tell us more, Rob.
Thanks, Justine, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us today for another Patch Tuesday webinar. It's almost summer. We do have quite a few updates to talk about today and some really important strategies that we're going to advise today as well. Starting with the Windows lifecycle, the date is getting closer and closer for Windows 10 Enterprise and Windows 11 Enterprise 22H2. You have until October of this year to move to a supported operating system. We do recommend Windows 11 24H2. So if you're upgrading Windows 10, go to that operating system and that feature update. If you are on 23H2, you do have support until 2026. However, we do recommend 24H2 as well there. We're still in year 2 of Windows Server 2012. So you have additional extended support. Next year will be the last year for that extended support, and obviously move to an operating system like 2019, 2022, etc. Now, these life cycles, when they do come end of life, it's very important because you won't be eligible for any further patches for those operating systems. So if you fall out of feature update, or if you fall out of operating system support, you won't be able to get any more updates. And interestingly, as we saw with Windows 7, Windows 8 as well, when the operating system goes end of life, or in fact, when the feature update goes end of life, some antiviruses will stop providing the signature support for them as well. So please, it's vitally important that you move to an operating system and a feature update that is in support, not just for Windows patches, but also for your antivirus protection. Now, if you are in a long-term servicing branch, you do have some extended support. I think you have it until 2030, so you have plenty of time. Unfortunately, though, that long-term servicing license is no longer available for purchase. So if you purchased it back in the day, you can continue to use it. Otherwise, I'm afraid you have to keep in support with the operating system and the feature update. Now, just a couple of days ago, we had a weaponized update for Google Chrome that was fixed. So if you're using any versions of Google Chrome from 100 to 137.0.7151, please go ahead and update Google Chrome as quickly as possible. This particular vulnerability is in Chromium version 8, and it contains an out-of-bounds read and write vulnerability that could allow a remote attacker to potentially exploit heap corruption or a corrupted or specially crafted HTML page. Now, a heap corruption basically is the memory that's used by the browser. Memory is usually managed by a memory manager, also known as a heap manager. And if that actually gets corrupted, then it's no longer able to track and allocate the free memory blocks. And in this case, it's quite serious because it could lead to system compromise. As I said, it is being weaponized, and it's not just affecting Google Chrome. It's the Chromium version 8 engine, which is used for other browsers such as Microsoft Edge and Opera as well. So if you are using those applications, please go ahead and update those as quickly as possible. Patch Tuesday gave us 66 new fixes, which is a relatively small Patch Tuesday as we've seen more recently. Although if we take that number and we compare it to last year, this is kind of a normal release cadence, which is good. It means they've got lots of testing and they've got lots of fixes. 10 are in fact critical, 56 are important. 8 are more likely to be weaponized out of the 66, which is about the same as last month. We do have one weaponized vulnerability, one public aware vulnerability. They are not the same. And we do have a jump point, which is an interesting type of vulnerability that allows a exploit to move laterally within the technology. So in the example I like to use for hypervisor, if the hypervisor is at the guest level, you potentially can jump out of the guest into the host or vice versa. And that's often used in the analogy of breadcrumbs, that you can exploit one particular vulnerability, move sideways within the system or within the compromised network, and you wouldn't even know it. So very, very interesting that we have just one jump point. If you are building a strategy, then perhaps the jump point should be an automatic inclusion in your remediation cycle this month. Let's take a look at our bug leaderboard. Now, the type of bug does very specifically offer greater risk or slightly lesser risk in terms of what the bug is addressing. Remote code execution is the leader again this month, and it is the most serious type of bug that is fixed. Remote code execution is a class of cyber attack in which attackers remotely execute commands to place malware or other malicious code on your computer or network. We have 25 fixes. We do have a brand new number two, which is information disclosure this month, 17 fixes. That's when a system unintentionally reveals sensitive information to unauthorized users, such as memory leaks. And in third spot, we have elevation of privilege, which has been at number two for several months now. That's when a threat actor gains access to an employee's account, bypasses the proper authorization channel, and successfully grants themselves access to data they're not supposed to have. We have 14 of those. On the bottom end, we've got denial of service, which is simply to cause the system to crash, freeze, or use up all of the resources. We have 6 of those. And the last 2 are spoofing and security feature bypass, 2 of each. That's where you gain unauthorized access to a system, or you trick a user, or in fact, when you bypass the security mechanism without disabling it, effectively rendering that security mechanism useless, so allowing you to use a feature you're not supposed to have. 2 of those are fixed. Now, if you are a absolute customer, then this is the recommended patch risk profile. All of these elements are available in your console right now for you to choose a strategy that will enable a proactive selection of vulnerabilities that you can patch and remediate. And that's based on several factors. Starting with the vendor severity. The vendor severity is interesting because some vulnerabilities that they release, they can dictate the severity of that particular vulnerability, and it goes from critical, high, or important, medium, low, and NA. But we like to compare that source of truth with the CVSS score, which is a score calculated by an independent organization, an independent body that can take the actual type of vulnerability that exists, the seriousness of that, how easy it is to exploit, and they can calculate a severity similar to the vendor, but it's a score out of 10, 10 being the equivalent of critical and 0 being the equivalent of NA. Now, when you take both the vendor severity and the CVSS score together, you have a much better idea of the seriousness of this. And if you are only able to deploy a few updates in phases or in stages or in groups or rings, as it's called under Microsoft, then perhaps you might want to deploy the most severe ones first, based on the severity of both the vendor and the CVSS score, and then several days later deploy the next ones and the next ones and the next ones. Now, there is a type of risk called a state, and that state of the vulnerability is either weaponized or public aware. Weaponized means that through our partners, we have learned that this particular vulnerability is under active exploit. It is being used in active attacks, and if a vulnerability is under active attack, it of course increases its severity. However, the vendor and the CVSS score doesn't always retrospectively go back and change or modify because it's been weaponized. Just because it's been weaponized does not mean that suddenly the vendor severity is increased. And so that's why it's important to have these states in your patching strategy, because it can select patches that have become weaponized even after it's initially released by the vendor, And some of the weaponized vulnerabilities, if you can believe, have been released with a severity of NA, like some of the Google browsers that we mentioned have been released with a lower than critical severity. So in this case, we can capture those weaponized vulnerabilities and we can prioritize those for deployment. If you have an automation, I really encourage you to use weaponization as a way of proactively deploying anything that's weaponized that is detected in your organization. For example, anything that becomes weaponized is immediately deployed 12 hours after its release to any devices that have a weaponized threat. Public aware, on the other hand, doesn't mean you're learning about it on this webinar. I'm sorry to say, it means someone, perhaps a white hat hacker, has released information to to the industry. Could be in the form of a YouTube channel, which is becoming more popular, or maybe bug bounty programs that actually show the exact precise way to exploit that vulnerability. So they will demonstrate exactly how to exploit it with the code or the injection of that vulnerability. Now, if something is public aware, it may not become weaponized, but if something is public aware, it means somebody can follow those steps to exploit and launch an attack. If something is weaponized and public aware, you have a double risk there. So I highly recommend when you're building a strategy, use public aware in that selection criteria. And if something is public aware and weaponized, maybe make that ultra urgent for inclusion in a remediation. Now, to slightly balance the risk, we have a countermeasure. A countermeasure means that the vendor has provided guidance to remediate a vulnerability in the form of a mitigation or a workaround. Now, they might suggest that a registry key or a change to a policy or changing of a type of service or changing to a security credential on the system can effectively work around the problem until you are able to deploy a patch. Keep an eye on those countermeasures because those countermeasures will give you the ability, especially if you have a workflow-based solution where you can deploy those registry keys to systems to work around the problem whilst you plan and prepare a patch deployment. Some of the patches, especially some of the cumulative updates, are very large, could be 1.5 gigabytes to 2 gigabytes in size. I've seen them, especially on the server OS. If you have a countermeasure and you can deploy that countermeasure very quickly to mitigate that weaponized vulnerability, go ahead and deploy the countermeasure. You can resolve the vulnerabilities much, much quicker that way, especially if some of those patches require reboots to become effective. Please note, though, any information around the use of a countermeasure, check the details of the vendor if you should revert the countermeasure after you've deployed the patch. That's very important. Some vendors provide registry key guidance, and certainly those registry keys should be reverted. They shouldn't be left alone, just isolated registry keys that don't have a real purpose. You might have to go ahead and remove those. Again, very simple to do if you have a workflow based solution. We can head and remove those registry keys once we're done, once we've deployed the patch. And of course, everything is based on your organization. Your organization is very, very unique, and a patch that is exposed on your organization may be different to others. So the source of truth should be your own organization. Take all of those factors into consideration, and where you have higher severity vulnerabilities with states that you are worried and you want to remediate, that have high exposure in your organization, use that exposure as the tool to help you prioritize that deployment. Very, very important. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what Microsoft has given to us this month. If you're a regular, thank you for joining us. We do put everything on the Absolute website. So if you pop across to absolute.com, you'll find all of the details that we've published about our own tools, our own technology. If you're familiar with our resilience risk index, we've actually now just released this. Very, very interesting. especially if you're looking at priorities and resilience of your cyber security and hygiene. Come up to the resources section, down to the blog, and you'll find all the blogs that we've released, including Patch Tuesday, each and every month. Go ahead and click on this, and you'll find the write-up. So we did have quite a few updates that we need to fix this month. We had updates from Windows, Office, SharePoint, Power Automate, kind of unique. WebDAV, I have some updates on that. Windows routing and remote access services is kind of a regular now. It's been in Patch Tuesdays for a couple of months now. I was hoping that they'd fix this permanently, but there still happens to be lurking bugs with those technologies. If we take all of the CVSS scores together and we combine them across the whole release, we have 484.8. The actual only thing I'm interested in is the average. The average severity for each of those vulnerabilities is 7.2. It goes as high as 9.8 and actually goes all the way down to 4.2. But the average is 7.2, which means the average is high severity vulnerabilities to fix. I've chosen five. Actually, I've chosen five, but you only need to worry about four of them. If you saw last month, we talked about Power Automate CVE 2025 47966. This particular vulnerability has been released as an information only for transparency by Microsoft. Power Automate is in the cloud, and they've already resolved this issue. So you don't have to resolve this in your organization. It does have, however, have a CVSS score of 9.8. Severity is critical, which is why they've already fixed it. My second one, though, is something you will have to address. This is CVE 2025 33053. This is the web distributed authoring and versioning, also known as WebDAV. It's a remote code execution vulnerability, which is the most serious. This one is weaponized, has a CVSS score of 8.8 with a severity of important. Its attack vector is network, which means any network, including the internet, with no privileges. It does require a user to click something. Of course, if you have great training and your users don't click anything, then you are less risky for this. However, we know our users. Now, WebDAV is an extension of the HTTP protocol, which allows users to collaborate and edit files on a web browser. So Internet Explorer, if you use SharePoint, you will be using WebDAV, and also some cloud file sync apps use WebDAV as well. So this is a fix for Microsoft operating system, but if you are using file sync apps, do make sure that they're up to date as well, because this vulnerability is weaponized. Next is CVE 2025 33073. This is the Windows SMB client elevation of privilege. Now, this one is not weaponized, but it is publicly aware. So someone has published exactly how to exploit this. Exploiting the vulnerability could allow a malicious actor to gain admin access or system level access, which is worse, to potentially compromise sensitive data and critical processes on the PC. Has a CVSS score of 8.8. Actually, interestingly, if it has a CVSS score of 9.0 and above, that makes it critical. Its attack vector is network, which means any files including the internet, and it has low privileges, no user interaction, low complexity. If you didn't know, the SMB is the server message block. That's part of Windows, allows your PC to connect to file shares over those SMB protocols. It's pretty much on every single operating system, and is also used for file and print sharing. So if you're using file print servers, or if you're printing to network print servers, you will be using SMB. So pretty much every operating system is vulnerable. Please go ahead and keep this up to date. Last two, CVE 2025 47172. This is Microsoft SharePoint. It's great to see Microsoft SharePoint patches being put into the Patch Tuesday release. This is an improper neutralization of special elements used in an SQL command called SQL injection. And this is not weaponized and it's not publicly known, but it is quite critical. The vendor, Microsoft, has given this a critical severity, CVSS score of 8.8. It does have an attack vector of network, means any network, including the internet. So any of your SharePoint servers that are available internet facing could be compromised. Low privileges, no user interaction at all, and low complexity. By exploiting this vulnerability, attackers could install malware, steal data, or take control over the system or over your network. And lastly, we talked about RAS a couple of times now. That's the Windows Routing and Remote Access Service. That's CVE 2025-33064. This is a vulnerability that is important severity. CVSS score is 8.8. It isn't weaponized, not about public aware right now, but it does have an attack vector of network, meaning any network, including the internet, low privileges, no user interaction, and low complexity. Now, by exploiting this vulnerability, an attacker could install malware, steal data, or take control of the system, very similar to SharePoint. Now, if you are deploying these, please make sure you have a robust testing strategy. We do want to make sure that anything that you deploy is fully tested. If you are not able to necessarily test everything, please make sure you have a resilient process to restore operation in the event of any issues. And please make sure that whatever you are using for recovery is able to be done at scale. So going back to backups is not a good idea, but if you are able to, at scale, be more resilient in your cyber hygiene, please go ahead and implement those processes. I'd like to finish with my final thoughts on a vulnerability. I mentioned a vulnerability which had a jump point. That's CVE 2025-47977. This particular vulnerability is a cross-site scripting vulnerability XSS in the nuanced digital engagement platform. And it is not the most serious CVSS of the lot, but certainly if I was a CISO, I would be recommending this be remediated because of that lateral attack. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you want the full download, go ahead and click on the PDF. We've made it super easy for you to download this. Just put that CVE into your tool set. Go ahead and write your action plan, whether it's priority 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then go ahead and remediate those vulnerabilities in this order based on your exposure. Thank you so much again for joining me today. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you in July. And until next time, happy patching.
Thanks, Rob. If you're already an Absolute or Success platform user, then if you've got any questions, reach out to your support team or customer success manager in the usual way. If you've got any questions and you're not a customer, then you can contact us via our website and follow the links or go direct to absolute.com/connect with an expert. If you have a question that you think might be relevant for other viewers, then please feel free to add a comment below the YouTube video, and we'll be monitoring for questions coming in. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for joining Absolute for our Patch Tuesday ACID special this month, and thank you, Rob, for sharing your expertise.
You're welcome.